Dear listener, welcome to a place where time slows down and the ancient echoes of the Mahabharata gently drift through the night. In this sleep story series, we share timeless tales of wisdom and wonder, of kings and sages, of love, destiny, and dharma. Let these sacred stories wrap around you like a soft blanket of calm. As you close your eyes, breathe deeply and float into restful sleep. In a time long, long ago, deep within a peaceful forest called Naimisharanya, the air was filled with calm. The trees stood still like guardians, and the leaves whispered softly with the breeze. This forest was not just any forest, it was sacred. A place where wise sages gathered to perform great rituals and listen to stories of the past. Here, the heart could rest and the soul could listen. One day, into this quiet clearing came a traveler named Sauti, also known as Ugrashrava. He was no ordinary traveler. He was a storyteller, one who carried with him the ancient tales of the Mahabharata. The sages welcomed him with warmth. They had just finished a long 12-year ritual called Satrayaga, and now they longed for stories. Stories that stirred the soul and brought wisdom to the heart. Sauti rested under the shade of a large tree. He drank cool water, and when he felt refreshed, he began to speak. His voice was gentle, like flowing water. And so, Sauti began. He spoke first of his travels, of the sacred rivers he bathed in, of temples hidden deep in forests, of mountain shrines and ancient lands. Among these holy places, one stood out, Samantaapanchaka, where the great Kurukshetra war had once been fought. The ground there was still, but held echoes of the thunder from the past. Then he told them of a great epic, a vast ocean of tales, known as the Mahabharata. He had heard it during a grand snake sacrifice performed by King Janamejaya. The story was recited by Vaishampayana, a disciple of Vyasa, in the presence of many sages and Brahmins. Sauti explained how the Mahabharata was unlike any other scripture. It was said to hold the essence of all the Vedas. When Vyasa composed it, he sought guidance from Brahma, the four-headed creator. Brahma praised the work, saying it would help humanity walk the path of Dharma and find liberation. But Vyasa knew that writing it would be difficult. So, he turned to Ganesha, the god of wisdom, and asked him to write it down. Ganesha agreed on one condition. Vyasa must narrate the story without pause. Vyasa smiled and agreed, but added a clever twist. Ganesha would have to stop and wait any time he didn't understand something. And so, the story was written, carefully, patiently, with deep thought and meaning woven into every word. The sages in the forest were full of curiosity. They asked many questions. Their voices, though soft, were filled with wonder. What secrets lie in Samantaapanchaka? Why did King Janamejaya hold a snake sacrifice? And who told these stories first? The forest, once still, now danced with questions. And Sauti, the storyteller, smiled gently and began. He spoke of an ancient time between Treta Yuga and Dwapar Yuga, when Lord Parashurama, an avatar of Vishnu, walked the earth. Parashurama had seen his father, a noble sage named Jamatagni, wrongfully killed by arrogant warriors. His heart, full of grief and rage, sought justice. But in his sorrow, he went too far. He wiped out 21 generations of Kshatriyas, the warrior class, believing it was the only way to restore balance. Rivers of blood flowed from these battles, and from them 5 rivers were born. But when the fires of anger faded, remorse crept into his heart. Parashurama, now weary from vengeance, sat beside these rivers and prayed. He called out to his ancestors not for glory but for forgiveness. His ancestors, touched by his sorrow and sincerity, blessed him. They absolved him of his sins and declared the rivers to be sacred. From that day on, the place was known as Samantaapanchaka, a land of sorrow turned holy, a land of pain that became peace. Time moved on, and many years later, at the same sacred spot, a great war was fought, the Kurukshetra War. Sauti described the size of the armies. The numbers were beyond imagination. Soldiers in the millions, elephants, horses, chariots, and footmen. A force of 18 Akshauhinis. Of those, 11 fought for the Kauravas and 7 for the Pandavas. The battlefield echoed with cries, but in Naimisharanya, all was quiet. The sages listened, still and calm. Their minds were now filled with wonder, not just about the war, but also about the strange ritual, the snake sacrifice. They asked Sauti, why did Janamejaya begin such a sacrifice? What happened before it all began? Then Sauti spoke of King Janamejaya again, a king who in his youth had seen pain and who now sought peace through a ritual. But his journey began with a small dog named Sarameya. During a sacred yajna, the little dog wandered into the ritual ground. Some of the king's brothers, worried it might be an ill omen, drove it away and beat it. The dog, frightened and hurt, returned to its mother, Sarama, a divine dog. Sarama approached the king afterward. She did not shout. She simply said that abuse of power and hurting the innocent had consequences. And then she left, her words hanging in the air like a soft warning. The king, disturbed by her words, reflected deeply. He realized something was not right and needed someone to guide him spiritually. So, he sought the guidance of a wise Brahmin named Somashrava, a learned man known for compassion and clarity. Janamejaya asked him to become the Purohit, the chief priest of the kingdom. Somashrava agreed. But soon, the one who was brought in to bring peace found himself leading a path of destruction. For it was during his time as chief priest that a young Brahmin named Udanka appeared in court. Udanka carried a fire in his heart. He told the king of his father Parikshit, a noble ruler who had died not in battle but by the bite of a venomous serpent. And it was Udanka who narrated the tale to Janamejaya. Many years ago, King Parikshit had wandered into the forest, tired and thirsty. He came upon a meditating sage and asked for water. But the sage remained silent, deep in thought. Frustrated, Parikshit took a dead snake and placed it on the sage's neck. The sage's son, seeing this disrespect, cursed the king. In 7 days, he would die from the bite of the snake king Takshaka. The curse came true. Takshaka entered the palace disguised and struck Parikshit down with venom. The gods could not stop him. No remedy could save the king. Udanka looked at Janamejaya and said, "Your father was stolen from you. Let justice fall upon all serpents." He urged the king to hold a snake sacrifice, not just to punish Takshaka, but to destroy all serpents. And so, the ritual began. Brahmins chanted sacred mantras. The air grew hot with energy. One by one, snakes of every kind were pulled towards the flame, falling from the skies, unable to escape the curse. The sky grew dark with their cries. But far away, in the house of the Serpent King, something stirred. The Serpent King Vasuki, terrified, rushed to his sister Jaratkaru, who had once married a sage of the same name. Together, they had a son. His name was Astika. And now, Vasuki begged his sister. The sacrifice must be stopped. Jaratkaru, filled with sorrow, turned to her son. Astika, wise beyond his years and full of compassion, agreed to go. He would not go with anger, but with calm words and gentle truth. He arrived at the ritual ground and greeted King Janamejaya with reverence. He praised the king's strength, his devotion to Dharma, and his care for his people. Janamejaya was moved, and when Astika was offered a boon, he asked not for wealth or power, but for the ritual to stop. He said, "To hold vengeance is to drink poison. To show compassion is to taste Amrit. You have avenged your father. Let the remaining live." The king, silent for a moment, nodded. The sacrifice ended. Peace returned. But Janamejaya had one final question. He turned to Vedavyasa, the composer of the Mahabharata, and asked, "If Dharma is so powerful, if compassion is the true path, then why did my ancestors, the Pandavas and Kauravas, fight such a terrible war? Did they know the truth? Didn't they hear wise words like those of Astika?" Vyasa, the silent sage, turned to his disciple Vaishampayana and gave him a nod. And so, the story of the Mahabharata began. With tales of birth and death, of promises kept and broken, of kings and queens, of gods and humans, of darkness and light, and of the eternal dance between Dharma and desire. Sleep now, dear listener, for the forest is quiet again. The fire has gone out, and the stories will wait for you until tomorrow.